Okay. Hey, welcome to Santa Barbara. I'm here at one of my clients' homes. We are in the process of doing inspections. I shouldn't say it's their home, they're in escrow to decide about purchasing this home. And I just thought I would talk a little bit about, excuse me, what happens when you're doing inspections. So from the seller's perspective as well as from the buyer's perspective. So in this case, I'm helping the buyer do their due diligence. So when you make an offer on a home, you agree on price and terms, and then you put 3% of the purchase price into escrow. And you do that within 3 days of acceptance. Then you have generally an inspection period contingency where you do your due diligence. So that's kind of what we're in the process of doing right now. Time is always of the essence, and you have a specific contractual time to get that done. So generally in Santa Barbara, the common inspections are a general inspection. So you kind of walk around and you look at the roof, the plumbing, the utilities. Is there like maybe a water damage under the sink in the bathroom? Are things up to code? So that would be your general inspection. It lasts 2 to 4 hours, kind of depending on the property. Very common is also a sewer lateral inspection. So you have someone that comes and they basically do a camera down, because the property owner actually owns the pipe under the ground, I think to the middle of the street. So a lot of times you do a sewer lateral inspection. Maybe there's a lot of trees and there's roots, so that happens. And then pest inspection. So in California, a lot of times we have termites or ants right now in Santa Barbara. So a lot of times you have a pest inspection. So the general, the pest, the sewer lateral, those are probably the most common ones for the buyer to do. Now, sometimes you might do a foundation inspection. You might do a soils inspection. You might do a more deep dive roof inspection, a more deep dive electrical inspection. So it really is case by case. And as the agent representing the buyer, my job is to kind of coordinate all those things and get the information to the seller. The seller decides, you know, what they want to do, what questions they have. I can recommend people for inspection, but a lot of time the buyer, they need to decide if that's really the inspection I want. They pay for the inspections in real time, and they may say, well, I don't want to do that inspection, I want to do this inspection. So you kind of work all that out. Now here at this amazing property, we got to do some additional inspections. If you come over here, excuse me. So we were also looking at, well, what if we wanted to add a pool, right? So I had someone here that was looking at planning, permitting, setbacks, what is possible, right? And then we were also talking about an accessory dwelling unit or an ADU. So if we come over here, beautiful property, beautiful views. And so how awesome would it be if it was possible to build a 1,200 square foot ADU above the garage? And where would you put parking and all of that? And then I guess the last thing I'll mention is if you look at the power lines here, there's a lot of power lines. So we're also looking into talking to SoCal Edison about their plans for undergrounding and potentially having, you know, additional electrical work there. We haven't even talked about interior design or finishes, kind of the cosmetic things. So that's everything I want to talk to you really quickly about the buyer side. Now, as a seller, when I represent the seller, some sellers will say, look, I don't want any surprises. I'm going to go ahead and consider, maybe I'll pay for those inspections up front. So when I'm helping a seller, I'll ask them, do you want to do a general inspection before we even put the property on the market? Do you want to do a pest inspection? Do you want to do a sewer lateral inspection? Seems like that became more common recently, especially like around COVID, because we were getting so many offers on homes. And so a seller might say, look, I did all the inspections already, so there's no surprises. And maybe I already fixed a few things. So it makes the seller feel like they're more able to say, you know, I've disclosed everything, I've done all the inspections. It just kind of takes a little of the guessing out of it. But they also may say, I don't want to pay for those things, I'll let the buyer do it. Most buyers will do an inspection. Sometimes a buyer will say, I want the property, and I'm just going to accept all the risk. We don't recommend that. It does happen sometimes. So if there's multiple people that want the home, someone may say, okay, I'll just take it, right? And so remember we talked about putting that 3% deposit into escrow. So after your contingency period is done, then the buyer needs to release that contingency, right? Or they don't release it, or they say, well, I found out that the roof has a giant hole in it. I want you to either repair it or give me a credit at close of escrow. So there's all these kind of conversations that happen at the end of that contingency period. If a person is paying cash, often the inspection is really the main portion of the discovery. Can I get fire insurance? All the inspections that we just talked about, those are the main considerations normally. If they're not paying cash, then they also have a loan and appraisal. So let's say you're a buyer and you are getting a mortgage, like many of us. In Santa Barbara, about 60% of the homes have a mortgage, 40% are probably about cash, depending on the price point. So let's say you have 3 contingencies. You have your inspection, you have your appraisal, and you have your loan. So you can release your inspection contingency and you could say, I'm all in, but I'm not yet ready to release my appraisal or my loan because I'm still waiting for the lender to do what the lender needs to do. Once all those inspections are released, and there are some others you want to review, seller documents, of course. If there's an HOA, you want to review the HOA financials. You want to make sure you can get insurance, kind of putting all of those under the general inspection contingency. Once you release all your contingencies, you say, I 100% can get a loan at 100% appraised, and I've done my inspection, I'm all in. Once you release all your contingencies, then you close escrow, let's say 10 days later as an example. If for any reason the buyer decides to walk away, that 3% good faith deposit stays with the seller. But that only happens if you've released all your contingencies. If you don't release your contingency and you can't agree to fix the hole in the roof, then that's when an escrow would basically fall out of escrow. Or let's say the loan didn't come through because you forgot to mention that your husband quit his job or her job. And so the loan says, oh wait, never mind, we're not going to do the loan. So that means you don't release your loan contingency. So I hope that kind of makes sense, talking about inspections that you can do, how the contingencies work. Primarily this time we were talking about inspections of property. The buyer side is making sure they do their due diligence, and the seller side is wanting to reduce risk so that when someone is going into contract with you, you know that it's gonna close and have the best possibility of close. If you have any questions, please talk to your favorite real estate agent, or please give me a call and I would be happy to go through this in more detail. And if you have any additional questions about real estate, inspections or otherwise, please let me know and I would love to help and add it to one of my future videos.